You think success is just a lucky break? A gift from the heavens for the chosen few? Really? Then why is it that some people work forever and never make it, while others seem to turn everything they touch into gold? Why is the world so unfair? Why do you wake up early and stay up late working twice as hard, only to end up with nothing? What is actually stopping you from reaching so-called good luck? Most people never really take the time to think about this. They just simply accept it as an unchangeable fate. They say, "That's just my luck. He had people helping him. She was born at the finish line." But that's not an answer. That's just repeating empty words to cover up a lack of understanding. Einstein once said that God does not play dice with the universe, and success is no different. When you really ask why luck smiles on one person and turns away from another, when you begin to dig into what is actually operating beneath the numbers and the fame, you discover something incredibly strange. A shocking truth, fundamentally different from your mundane, everyday experiences. It will change everything you think you know about effort, opportunity, and results. Luck isn't a random event. It's not a pair of dice tossed by some invisible hand. Luck is a structural constant. It's an attribute woven into the fabric of reality itself, much like the way gravity keeps the stars in their places. Look at this actual number. 95% of new businesses fail within their first 5 years. 95%. That is the brutality of reality. But instead of moaning about bad luck or the times, have you ever asked yourself, why do the other 5% survive? Is it because they're just lucky? Or because they have accidentally or intentionally understood a physical law that you are completely ignoring? Let me show you what I mean. Let's start with something incredibly precise, a physical entity that every one of us knows: the moon. The moon is falling toward the Earth every second, every minute, but why has it never actually hit the ground? Why has it been hanging there, stable for billions of years? The answer to that question is the key to breaking the chains of randomness and beginning to master your own luck. Let's start with Isaac Newton. In 1666, he sat in his garden and wondered about something most of us take for granted. Why doesn't the moon fall to Earth like an apple? If gravity pulls the apple down, why doesn't it pull the moon down? His answer didn't just change physics, it completely changed how we should perceive success. Look at the numbers to see this magical logic. On the ground, if you drop a ball, it falls about 16 feet in the first second. That is a constant, an indisputable truth. Gravity is always pulling us down. Now look at the moon. It's about 240,000 miles from the center of the Earth. We are standing on the surface about 4,000 miles from the center. This means the moon is 60 times farther away than we are. Newton had a brilliant insight. What if gravity gets weaker with the square of the distance? This means if you go twice as far, gravity becomes 4 times weaker. 3 times farther, 9 times weaker. And if you go 60 times farther, gravity should be 60 squared times weaker. That's 3,600 times weaker. So, if on Earth things fall 16 feet in a second, then at the moon's distance, it should only fall 16 feet divided by 3,600. What's the result? About 1/12th of an inch per second. And guess what? That is exactly how far the moon falls toward Earth every second to keep itself in orbit. But why does it never hit the ground? Why does an object weighing billions of tons hover over our heads for billions of years without collapsing? Because the moon is moving sideways, what physicists call tangential velocity, at an incredibly fast speed. It falls toward the Earth, but because it is rushing sideways so fast, it keeps missing the Earth. It falls, but it misses. It falls, but it constantly misses the target of the ground below. That is the definition of an orbit. Continuous falling while continuously missing the collision due to a large enough sideways velocity. Now, apply this dry logic to your own life. Most people think success is about flying up and resisting the gravity of failure. They try to use willpower, use suppression to not fall. They fear every time they feel themselves going down. But the truth is, failure is the gravity of this universe. It is a fundamental force. It is always there, always pulling you down with a constant acceleration. You cannot eliminate failure, just as the Earth cannot eliminate gravity. Your biggest mistake is trying to stand still so you don't fall. But in the physics of success, if you stand still, the gravity of stagnation will pull you to the ground instantly. You will shatter. Success isn't about standing firm on the ground. Success is an orbit. To achieve that orbit, you don't need to fight the pull of failure. You need a large enough sideways velocity. That is your skill, your effort, your accumulation of thousands of actions. When you strive fast enough and act enough, you will still fall toward failure. But because your sideways velocity is so great, you will continuously miss giving up. You fall, but you don't hit the ground. You hover in the space of winners because you are moving too fast for failure to catch your heels. This is not just a theory. This is a perfect prediction. When you understand that success is an absolute balance between falling and moving sideways, you will stop fearing the falls. You will realize that the secret doesn't lie in avoiding falling, but in moving fast enough to keep missing the trap of stopping. But how do you accumulate that sideways velocity when everything around you seems to be intentionally dragging you down? How do you ensure your every strike actually creates acceleration instead of just meaningless echoes? Let's look deeper into how the smallest discrepancies, those seemingly hopeless misses, are exactly what lead us to the greatest discoveries. Now let's look at a blacksmith working in a dark forge. There's only the glow of the red fire and the rhythmic sound of a hammer striking a steel anvil. Imagine he is trying to forge a legendary sword, a perfect weapon without a single flaw. To achieve this, he must strike the hammer 10,000 times. 10,000 swings over months of grueling labor. The first 9,999 strikes are nothing special. They are just dry, exhausting blows, and none of them make the sword glow or transform miraculously. Then the 10,000th strike falls. A different sound echoes, and suddenly the sword erupts in a mystical blue light. The crude iron has become a masterpiece. Onlookers will gasp. What luck! He caught the exact moment the steel reached the perfect temperature to transform. But do you really think that was luck? Do you think that brilliant moment was an independent event? A random gift from the gods? No, absolutely not. That 10,000th strike was no more special than the 9,999 strikes before it. It was simply the strike that marked the system reaching the threshold of change. The truth is, luck is not a single event. It is the consequence of a trial structure. Without those 9,999 misses, the strikes you call failures, the blows that seem to leave no visible mark, that 10,000th lucky strike would be physically impossible. Luck here is a cumulative error. Every time you try and fail, you don't return to the starting line. You are accumulating an error in the structure of reality, gradually shifting toward the threshold where the probability of success explodes. Just as Romer observed Jupiter's moons, he saw them sometimes 8 minutes ahead of schedule, sometimes 8 minutes behind Newton's predictions. Most people would call that a measurement error or the bad luck of a flawed theory. But Romer had confidence in the law. He understood that the error wasn't randomness. It contained a greater secret, the velocity of light. When you see someone succeed and call it luck, you are looking at the 10,000th strike while ignoring the 9,999 times they hammered in the dark. You are looking at the result while ignoring the frequency. Luck is actually a function of trial frequency. The more you increase your action frequency, the more you force the universe to reveal that cumulative error sooner. Here is the truly shocking part. Luck doesn't stand outside the law of effort. It is a part of that law. But why does the universe work this way? Why must we go through thousands of failures to bump into one success? Because luck, much like time and space, is not a fixed thing. It is flexible. And to understand that flexibility, we must step into a stranger world, where the common laws of life are completely bent. Let me make this concrete. Imagine two people playing a simple coin toss game. The rule is, if it lands on heads, you win. That's luck. The first person flips the coin once a day. If it lands on tails, he has to wait a full 24 hours to try again. For him, luck is something rare, a luxury, and purely a gamble. He spends his entire day praying, checking his feng shui, hoping that tomorrow fortune will call his name. Now, look at the second person. He flips the coin once every second. Once per second. In just 1 minute, he has made 60 attempts. In 1 hour, he has 3,600 opportunities. For this second person, heads, luck, appears constantly. It happens so often that he no longer has time to be nervous or to pray. Someone looking from the outside would say, "My God, he is so lucky. Luck just won't leave him alone." But what is the truth? The probability of flipping heads for both people is exactly the same, 50-50. No one is favored. The only difference isn't in fate, but in the velocity of action. This is the real shock that could break your brain. Luck is not a random variable. It is a structural constant of the universe. Just as the speed of light is 299,192,458 ms, always fixed, unchanging for anyone measuring it. Luck is always there, present in every corner of the space-time of opportunity. It never disappears. It only waits for you to pass through. Einstein realized something so strange it was almost unthinkable. Space and time are not fixed. They are flexible. They bend, they stretch, and they compress to ensure one thing, that the speed of light remains a constant for everyone. And this is the relativity of luck for your life. When you increase your velocity of action, when you perform trials with extremely high frequency, you are actually bending the space-time of opportunity around you. Think of it this way. In life, the distance between you and your next success is a certain path within the opportunity space. If you walk, act slowly, that path seems infinite. But if you move at an extreme velocity, continuous testing, that path begins to contract. These effects are real. They are not illusions. The space-time of opportunity actually shrinks as your testing velocity increases. The distance between lucky moments shortens so incredibly that they overlap, forming a continuous chain of success. At that point, the world looks on and calls it fate or genius, but in reality, the universe is just adjusting space to match the terrifying speed at which you are moving through the trials. The universe does not pick favorites to bless. The universe has no feelings. It only has laws. The universe is simply bent by entities that move too fast through experiments. You never meet luck by accident. You collide with it. You collide with it because you occupy too much volume in the space of opportunity. If you just stand still, the opportunity space around you is flat and empty. But when you rush forward, you create ripples, gravitational vortices that pull opportunities toward you. You become an entity with such great success mass that luck has no choice but to be sucked into your orbit. This is the beauty of the truth. Success is not for those who know how to wait for luck, but for those who know how to create a velocity that makes luck an inevitable consequence. You don't need to beg for luck. You only need to act fast enough so that the space-time of randomness has no choice but to contract beneath your feet. Look at this avalanche. An avalanche of effort that started centuries ago and continues to this very day. You see, a single, tiny snowflake means nothing. It is weak and easily dissolved. But when it rolls long enough, with a fast enough velocity, it accumulates mass and acceleration to become an unstoppable force. An avalanche of success. Every small action, every hammer strike in the dark, every time you flip a coin or perform a trial, they are those snowflakes. A small effort repeated with extreme frequency creates the miracle the world calls luck. But now you know the truth. It's not a miracle. It's physics. So, my message to you is simple. Stop wasting time looking for luck. Luck is not something to be found. It is something to be collided with. Build yourself a velocity so great that luck has no choice but to be sucked into your orbit. Move so fast that the space-time of randomness must contract beneath your feet. Success is not a vague theory or a hollow hope. It is a precise physical prediction based on the law of conservation of effort. When you move fast enough through the trials, you occupy so much volume in the opportunity space that success becomes an inevitable consequence. This universe does not favor anyone. It only operates according to laws of absolute fairness, and the beauty lies right there. The fact that we can understand this law, measure it, and use it to bend reality and turn the impossible into the possible. That is the magic of individual action. Not waiting, not resignation, but truth.